This is my latest project where I'm putting the V8 from a BMW M3 into my E86 Z4 Coupe. And we're back in the build tent on the Z4 EVO build, and I've not been on it for about a week, or at least 5 days, so I'm going to continue, or we will continue where I left off from last episode, which was getting all of the cooling package mounted on the front end. I have some brackets now that I can fit the power steering cooler with, and that's going to go on the radiator there, so I will do that next. And then I will need to look at mounting this transmission cooler underneath this frame somewhere. I'm first going to see if these hose clamps are the right size. They should be. Yeah, I can make them work. So they just have a nice rubber sleeve in them, which goes around the really rather vulnerable aluminium thin pipe work. And that's where the one on the other side will go. It will be a lot easier mounting these parts with the front bumper removed. So now I'm just going to make a mark where I can put the maximum room I have basically inside the bumper here for the transmission cooler. And then I have a guide when I go to mount it with the bumper off. I know it's still going to clear. I make the mark on the transmission cooler, making sure nothing is being chafed, especially the two pipes that run up the side of the front supports. Once I'm happy with the marks, I can then take the front bumper back off. This gives me access again to offer the power steering cooler back up and see where it's going to go. When it comes to positioning this cooler, I want it partially in the nostril area so it gets a good amount of airflow but also doesn't restrict the radiator. This front crash bar dictates where the lower part of that vent is. So I'm thinking I want it roughly where it was mounted stock on this radiator on the M3. About that kind of height. Yeah, I think that'll be good. I am going to mount it to the radiator and not the chassis, so it's one unit. I just need to make a mark on the side of the radiator, either side, the height and the position roughly, and then I can take it out and we can get it fixed up on the bench. The height of the cooler will actually sit a bit higher up, as the geometry of the front bumper between the Z4 and the M3 are different. The vents are a bit higher on the Z4, so I'm going to put this one in accordingly. I carefully remove the cooler, then take the radiator back out. Once it's back out and on the bench, out of curiosity I take the AC condenser and pull the plastic guard off the one side. This is what originally held the power steering cooler in. I'm going to see if there's any part of it I can utilise to make it a bit easier to mount and make it look neater. It may not work. When I get it offered up to the rest of the parts, I play around with it for a bit, just to soon realise it's probably not going to be effective. We'll do away with that and start from scratch. I start by fabricating a simple aluminium bracket. I found a suitable place for it to be mounted safely to the side of the radiator without drilling through into the inner core. I drill out the holes for the rivets and then I can get it into place. What I have done with this bracket is I've cut a slit down the top, only about halfway down, so the plastic moulding that holds the two pipes together, the little sleeve on the back can slot into it, and in theory it should stop it from twisting back and forth as it's held in place at the top. I've just put a bolt simply through the centre of the plastic coupler there, going through the bracket. There's 3 rivets in place and 1 big rivet, so I think it's strong enough. Now I need to move on and do the other side. For the other side, I use a slightly different shaped bracket. Same principle. I will find a suitable place again to rivet it to the plastic on the outside edge. This thing, even when the fluid's in it, it's not going to weigh a lot, so it doesn't need to be too over-engineered. Once the holes are drilled, I can get the rivets in. Then I can bolt the hose clamp to the mount. Happy with the way it's mounted now, so let's try it on the car. With the radiator back in place, you can see there's a nice even gap along there between the radiator and that cooler. There is room around the bottom pipe to fit into the engine bay through the frame. There's nice clearance, it's not rubbing anywhere, and it's a simple system of just bracketry. I can always paint them black if I want to. It's nice and level on the radiator as well. Let's move on to the transmission cooler. Before I start mounting this one up, I'm just going to double check that the light isn't affected. It's going to be in the way. And it's looking like it's not going to affect it in any way, even if I trim the base plate slightly. That's good news. To give me the best chance to fit the cooler that's going in the front wing, I remove a bit of the material from the mount that holds the headlight unit in. This should give me that much more room to get it into place without causing us any issues. For this one, I'm going back to a steel bracket which I will weld to the frame. It's going to go somewhere along there, and then a couple of holes in this bracket. And I'm going to weld captive nuts onto this plate which is on the cooler, as the rubber mounts are actually already installed, so by bolting it directly to that plate on the top, it's still going to have some flexibility for the cooler itself, and it's going to go something like that. I cut the bracket out of some sheet steel and then I offer it up to the car. Before I take the cooler off, I need to mark out where the holes are going to go onto this top plate. Making sure it's sat in the right place, I mark out the 2 holes. Then I can remove the cooler from the car. Then I start working on removing the top plate from the cooler that I'm going to use to mount it to the car. See, BMW used rivets too. I forgot that this piece was aluminium, not steel, so I'm going to change my method slightly of how I'm going to mount it. I'm going to drill a couple of holes in this plate, put a couple of bolts facing up so the threads go upwards, and the head of the bolt will just sit in the recess between this plate and that rubber mount. They'll hold in place whenever it's off the car, and then I can just put nuts on the top when I want to fasten it to the chassis. It didn't take long to drill through the aluminium plate. Then I could get a couple of bolts and feed them up through the bottom before I mount the plate back to the cooler. I have it set up for welding the bracket on now. I've held it in place with cable ties, and I have a little piece here which I'm going to weld to the frame. We'll give it an extra bit of support. It's a bit thicker steel, and then I'll weld that to the bracket that's already on the mount that holds the cooler on. Confident it's set in the right place, I'm going to fully weld the bracket to the car now. I can do this with the cooler mounted. This will help to ensure I get it in the perfect position. I will leave that cool down for a minute before I bolt it back up, but I think it should be fine. With the temperatures dropped back down, I find a wing nut and do it up tight, just to see I'm happy with it mounted in place. When it comes to final assembly, don't worry, I will put shorter bolts in there, and I'll use some lock nuts to replace that wing nut with. And until I get the front bumper on and check it clears it, I can't say this section is done. So let's get the bumper on. Starting to lose count of how many times this bumper's been on and off, I put it back on. During this fabrication process, it's very important to keep test fitting it. This should save me timely mistakes when it comes to mounting everything to the front of this car. I would say it's looking good. We've got a bit of clearance, very small amount, but clearance is clearance. Until it's all trimmed up with the bumper on and all the guards and arch liners on, we don't know for sure exactly where that point there is going to be as far as it sits in. But I think we're good. That means we are basically there now with the rough layout of the cooling package. We have all of the coolers mounted to this front clip. They're in the right place, and I think they're going to work well with the cooling. You can see how the power steering intercooler is right in the centre there of the vents and the grille and the front bumper, so yeah, I think that bit of extra time spent to get it laid out nicely should pay off dividends when it comes to the performance of the engine and how it will be cooled. And then we've got to think about the ducting, which is another huge task. But for now, I want to try and get some more components in the engine bay, and perhaps we should start by looking at where this header tank is going to go, around here somewhere. I seem to remember there was a lot more space in the engine bay of the M3, but looks maybe deceiving. Yes, I do believe there is a bit more space in the M3, critically in the areas between the engine and the chassis legs. This is where lots of components go. So regardless of the Z4 having a longer bonnet, therefore having a slightly bigger engine bay overall, the fact that it is narrower does cause a few issues when it comes to fitting things like this expansion bottle. This stage is a bit like buying a Lego set, and then the bits you get in the kit aren't for that plan, if you know what I mean. They kind of fit, but they kind of don't at the same time. It's slowly finding its home. With a bit of fettling, I think we can get it to work. Yep, that part doesn't fit. I am glad of the fact I'm not doing a turbo build again, as there's a lot less components to fit in the front of this car. Once again, it comes down to the height of the bonnet for that part. Let's get this up and out of the way. And with the headlight removed, I can actually feel on top of the cap. So I have a bit more room to play with there. That's stuck. There we go. I can get my hand over the cap quite easily with the bonnet shut, so I can come up a little bit more if I need to. Before we get too carried away with putting parts in this area between the engine and the front of the car, I think it's a good idea to get the arch liner loosely bolted in place. Then we know exactly how much room we have to play with without it fouling the front wheels. The M3 and the Z4 parts are now so cross-contaminated. I'm 95% sure that's for the Z4. No, that's I don't know what that's for. It's not for there though. This might be the rear one. I think these are the right ones. Yeah, much better. Okay, I'll get these installed. In order to get the arch liner on, I need to find the bolts, which could be tricky, but I think I know where they are kept. They've been sat here all this time. As you can see, I keep everything in a really tidy condition, but I think, it was so long ago, but I think some of these bolts, probably ones like that, are the arch liner bolts. Let's see. Before I get the liner in this side, I'm going to dig out the washer bottle because I think it sits under the wheel arch down here somewhere. So I'm going to wait on that one, but I can put the offside one on because I'm working in this area. I also need to grab the power steering bottle as well from somewhere. I get the arch liner installed on the offside. It just has to loosely be in place. These things need a hell of a good clean, like most of the other parts, before final assembly. With the arch liner in on this side, we may as well continue in this area. This is the power steering reservoir and the pipe work, so it's a good opportunity to see if it will fit, for one, with the new setup. which I hope it will. However, if you remember, if you followed the build along, this has some damage, so it's been repaired. I think it'd be alright, to be honest, but it's worth checking before I put it in. Finally, worst case scenario, I will order another one. I carefully remove the radiator, which will allow me to start fitting the hoses for the power steering. Someone's angry up there. First thing I'm going to do is fit the oil lines from the oil cooler that go into the engine block there. It's going to end up as a bit of a spider's web if I'm not careful. And I want to make sure the cooler is only tapped in lightly on the brackets that I've made that go under the front supports. Just want to make sure it's not going to twist and deform while I'm pushing the pipes. I'll just use cable ties and secure them first. I start with the first line from the main engine oil cooler. Then I try and fettle the other one up into place. This one's a little more tight, so it took a bit more working around everything else. And that's the two oil cooler lines connected. Just imagine that, there's a bracket down there that holds these two pipes in the right place. Figured. Doing a swap with two cars that are both rear wheel drive and that are BMW, it seems to be paying off because everything seems to kind of fit OEM almost. There's obviously still a lot more stuff to go in the car, so we are still at the relatively easy stage. It's only going to get more difficult. With the support bracket nipped up, I do the top connections up tight. Then I move on to the power steering system. Oil still everywhere. Right, I'm just going to go for it. While I make a mess and try not to get the car covered in fluid, I try to get the pipes into place. Already, we're quickly running out of room. This is when I realise I've gone over the wrong side of the pipe. I'd probably say I have. You can see how quickly we can get into trouble. I've tried putting these two lines that come off the reservoir in two orientations now, and it's not ideal. They're kind of crossing over with the transmission cooler lines, so I think I need to do some juggling around there once I get them set up roughly how I want it, so it can sit freely and not be snagging on anything. Then we can think about hooking up the lines to the pipes, and one of which is on the back of the radiator. Just from swapping that pipe to go in between the two lines that come off this reservoir, you can see how easy it is to move around, and it can sit nicely somewhere up out the way. I think that's definitely the best orientation we have. Let's get the pipe connected. Well, I get one of them connected and then I get the radiator on. I easily fit the lower pipe. Before I get the radiator back onto the car, I have the rest of the power steering lines that go to the rack to loosely put in place, and also I need to get to the front of the engine where one of them goes into the pump on the side of the front of the block, which is going to be really hard to get to if the rad's in. So I will work on getting those pipes in, and then we can get the radiator in and everything should be able to be plumbed together. Before I can get the all-important pipes connected to the steering rack, I first need to get a few more bits off the front of the engine to get access back. I'll explain now. To make things a little easier, I've disconnected the oil cooler lines and just pulled the idler pulley out, as far as I can at least, and then I can put the banjo bolts in the oil feed that comes off the power steering on the inside.
With everything cleared out of the way, I get the pipe and the banjo fitting back into the pump that's on the engine. Now you can find out how I got on with fitting the lines that go into the steering rack underneath the car. While I was designing the steering setup on this build, I was a little concerned at how these were going to fit and clear mainly the bottom lower arm where the bolt goes up through into the subframe, and it clears it quite nicely. There's a few mil all the way around, so that's good. Now we can get the radiator in and join the pipes up, and then that's pretty much all of the plumbing work as far as the cooling goes on the car. How quick was that? In no time at all. It seems like we have a lot of the plumbing work in the car. It's starting to look more like a working engine bay. Let's see if my positioning of the power steering cooler is correct. That was quite satisfying. You can see the easy fittings plugged in quite nicely. There is a bit of clearance, maybe a small cut to the frame there, just to allow for a bit more movement there. But the pipes aren't fouling anything. Bearing in mind we don't have the auxiliary belt on yet, so we'll have to possibly modify that a bit to make sure it fits. And then we're just left with a whole bunch of pipes underneath. So the next job to do is to figure out how we're going to neatly align all of these and get them all fixed up so they're not flapping everywhere. I lied, that's not the next thing I'm going to do. It makes sense to get as many things in the engine bay as I can before we start fixing things in place. So that goes for the pipes down below, and also things like the expansion bottles and the reservoir. If anything has to go next to it, for example, if I bolt it down tight now, I might have to start remaking brackets and fabricating stuff unnecessarily. So I'm going to start getting more items in the car, and then we'll just sort of juggle it all around to make it fit. Hopefully the radiator will stay in for a little bit now, so I'm just going to bolt it in so we can test fit more pipes and just see how everything's going to be laid out. While I fit the pair of brackets to the top of the radiator that I previously made, I wonder what else is going to fit in this engine bay. Now the radiator is fixed in place, I can accurately see whether things like this pipe is going to be long enough, and I can confirm it's probably short about an inch. So it's not a problem, because like I said before, I can just extend the hose and maybe get a silicone one or a slightly cooler looking one on there at some point. But at least if I hold it in roughly in place, I can see what else needs to go around it, and it's going to be taken up by that in the engine bay, so that's allocated. With this pipe connected, you can see how much I need to make up, no problem. And then the pipe running off the side, which is interesting, obviously it clips into there, goes around there, and then conveniently directs itself to that port there. But there's already one on there. I think I know what I've done. I need to remove this one. I need to remove this one, and I think what I have done, this one either goes like that or the other way around. No, definitely this way around. Let's get that out of the way so you can see the connection on the branch for the cooling pipes. That goes on there somewhere. If you remember when I measured the width of the engine bays, the Z4 was about 30mm narrower than the M3, and that's probably why there's a bit of tension in that pipe. This would have sat a bit further out, so I may have to shorten this one. No big deal. We can always reroute it as well if we have to. I'm glad I've done away with the AC unit, as the pipe work would have had to have gone through there, and it's really busy already. There's not a lot of room. So in regards to the other side, the near side, we only really have the heater hoses, I think, come from there and wrap around the chassis leg We've got fuel lines, stuff like that, but there's not really much to be concerned about. And at the back of the engine, I think I have even more room than the M3, because the bulkhead sort of comes quite close, because the overall shape of the car is completely different, this being a coupe. More of a longer bonnet setup, so I'm not too concerned at the moment about fitting stuff at the back. However, I do want to figure out the intake, so I'm going to get the main plenum back on now. I'll take all these foams out, and then we'll see about roughly how we're going to set this air filter system up. Everyone who thinks I should put my hand in my pocket and buy a carbon intake, leave a comment below. You know the ones. That's on. Now I need to see how this is going to fit the Z4 washer bottle. It should be OE fitment, as we've not modified this area at all. Just got to remember where it went. I'd say not in there. Sorry to those Z4 owners that are probably screaming at the screen right now. I completely forgot where this locates, and it turns out that it locates pretty much there. The tab here is for that mounting point on the bottle. So this could be obsolete. I may not be able to run this unless I can get it under the wing somewhere down there where my initial thoughts were. Bear with me, I'll put the arch liner on and then we'll decide whether we're going to do away with this altogether. Even if I can relocate this to that side, it's probably not going to work very well because there's no filler neck, it's just straight into that bottle, so the point that you fill it through that cap is probably not going to be accessible. I can't put it over there because I think there's more stuff over there which I forget, but I know the ECU and the wiring, all that allocated space is that corner. I'm thinking that's the only shot. Before I do anything, I'm going to get the arch liner in on this side. You may have heard me say earlier that the engine bay is a bit narrower on the Z4 over the M3. This could start causing us some issues now, like fitting the washer bottle. We may have to start getting creative with this engine bay layout. With the arch liner in place, the short answer is there's no way we're going to be able to run the standard Z4 one. All this area is going to be airbox probably, and it just eliminates engine bay options. There may be a bit of room in there, so you could possibly fit a smaller aftermarket bottle and then run a hose up through there, maybe fill a neck. We'll see. Let's get some more bits in place, and then by process of elimination we're going to find out exactly where it needs to go. I have a bit more of the air intake, so we'll get that on the car. Nice easy part. I also have reasonable clearance from the front panel to this part of the intake, so that's good news. Now for the tricky bit. Here's the rest of the airbox from the M3. Yeah, that's a bit of an issue there. I'd say we're may as well just throw this part in the bin. This area here is now down to my creative discretion on how I'm going to make the airbox and what sort of material I'm going to use, etc. Potentially room for some good improvements there, but we'll see how it unfolds. I want to retain the factory point where it comes in through the front, so I need to utilize the space I have, essentially that area there towards the right of the radiator. On the front leg is the space I have, and then obviously the air is going to be directed through the kidney grill. I have this part which is factory Z4, so I might be able to use some of this or go designing from scratch. It's entirely up to how much work I want to do, really. I have gone and grabbed the washer bottle from the M3, as this was fitted inside the wing, so there's scope to fit that in the wing here and then have the filler neck come up around here because it's nicely shaped and it can pretty much go anywhere in that vicinity, so possibly we can use that in the wing. And before anyone goes, oh, just use the Z4 airbox, let me share a little secret with you. Not going to fit either. What does fit though, even with my light modifications, is this panel. Start to get an idea how clean it will look when it's all in place. Don't like how heavy this is though. I may have to upgrade this too. Before I start designing a completely new air induction system, and I need to figure out how the ducting is going to work at the front in general, I am going to see if the washer bottle fits in the wing, and then that's sort of the bigger, bulkier items covered, and we know where we're going to go from there as far as space goes in the engine bay. Having peeled back the arch liner and had a look up inside the wing, I think we are definitely going to have room for this. There's quite a lot of recess around there, but I do need to completely remove the wing before I can test fit it. There's no way of getting it in there now, and that involves probably taking the door off to get to the bolt on the inside, etc. So I think I'm going to leave that job for next week, as I'm away again for another week, and we could also start the two big jobs. So we've got the intake to design, try and take the wing off this, get that fitted, and then we're not actually too far away from, obviously the obvious is the wiring loom. That's going to be quite a big job, but as far as general layout goes, I'm very pleased with minimal modifications. We've got a lot of the M3 parts in there. I'm also thinking when it comes to the brake servo, I might upgrade it to the M3 one if it fits easily enough in the bulkhead. I have all the pedals, everything to run it, so it kind of makes sense to do that. If I ever want to upgrade the brakes, it's probably got a bigger servo, which means it can handle that. And also I think I've already said, but the steering column, I'm going to use the M3 one with the steering wheel, and it should insert quite nicely in the Z4 dashboard with some modifications. Again, big plans for the interior. Hopefully we can reduce a lot of weight inside the car. Once again, I'm very pleased with the progress in the engine bay. Hopefully we're going to get some drivetrain bits back soon, and then we can check it all works and go for the big strip down. So if you enjoyed the episode, give it a thumbs up. If you have any comments or advice on the build, you know where to leave them in the comment section. Go subscribe, and I'll see you all very soon.